Already still the ultimate morning show here on Reaper 100.5 FM. My name is Dima. Welcome back to the Abuja studio. It is time for us, as promised, to check out the papers and see the stories that are making headlines. But before we dive right into that, just to let you know that at this moment we are live on YouTube. So, yes, we don't have the phone lines open for you to share your thoughts and contribution on some of the stories, but you can make your comments in the comment section on YouTube. That is why we make it possible at times like this. So yes, the handle is Ray Power Abuja on YouTube. Now let's start checking the papers. We have quite a number of them this morning, as much as we can take as we head into the weekend. I'll be starting off with the leadership newspaper. The big story here is a statement coming from the Zamfara state governor, and it says, I refused to pay ransom for my brothers. Told kidnappers, if you like, kill them. Now, that story is on page 4. We'll be discussing that in detail when we are done taking the papers. Another story here, Peter Obi, give El-Rufai fair trial, or protect Obi rather, give El-Rufai fair trial, Kwankwaso tells the federal government. The story is on page 7. To other stories, Shetima seeks governor support for adoption of number. That is, it was in the paper, I think this year, that 112 should be the national number for whatever you're calling for, medical emergency 112. Now, the vice president is seeking the governor's support to adopt that as the emergency number. But details on that story is on page 8. I won't betray Nigerians. Nigerians trust. Reforms will deliver better future. Coming from Tinubu, and that's on page 4. Senate approves 404.07 billion naira police trust fund budget for 2025 and 2026. Details on that story is on page 9. Bandits threaten to kill Oyo pupils if troops came closer. That's a statement from the defense minister. Page 7, read there. But let's move on from, all right, before we move on from the leadership newspaper, 112 Nigerians to be deported from US over worst of the worst crimes. You go another person country and a crime with the commit. Anyway, that's on page 7. Let's move on from that and go to the Daily News Craft newspaper this morning. Big story says discordant tunes over proposed state police. Ex-Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak supports state police, says Nigeria needs federal paid response force. NAS set up conference committee, says Kalo rather. Musa wants it could be silver bullet or Hiroshima. That story is on page 2 in detail. Meanwhile, EFCC arraigned Danladi Umar over alleged 15.5 million naira fraud. That's on page 3. Anti-fraud operations. Interpol nabs over 5,800 Yahoo boys, recovers $293 million in 4 months across Nigeria and 96 others. That's on page 4. And Senate backs Lafarge takeover, demands job, CSR for most communities. That's on page 4. On the matter of insecurity, Senate approves 404 billion naira for police trust fund. That you can read on page 11. And Nigerian banks missing among 17 lenders. SWIFT launches blockchain payment. That story opens on the front page here and continues on page 2. Before we leave the Daily News Craft paper this morning, 70% of FCT completed projects were abandoned for 15 years. And that's coming from the FCT Minister Nyesom Wike. The story in detail is on page 7. And that's it from that. We move on to the Daily Independent. Big story. Reps to the federal government says halt, asks the federal government to summon South Africa. Then you have the federal government in the country, says us to stay vigilant. Well, you can read that on page 7. Talking about terrorism financing, the story here says Mieti Allah president arraigned over alleged $2.63 million complicity. That story is on page 7. Okay, alleged graft, court remands ex-CCT chairman Umar in Kuje prison, page 6, read there. Ndume speaking to Tinubu says, speak to Nigerians regularly on government policies. That story is on page 6. Above the nameplate of the Daily Independent, Mba urges federal financial, okay, let me take that again. Mba urges financial autonomy, tech backing for state policing, says fears of abuse, says no one would be. I have no idea what he was trying to say there, but anyway, that was a statement from him, and that opens on the front page and continues on page 2. But let's move on to the Standard Times newspaper, where the story begins with the matter on insecurity in Nigeria. It says here, Tinubu meets service chiefs. Opens on the front page here, continues on page 2. To other stories, Adeleke warns Oshun voters against selling voter cards to APC. That story is on page 2. All right, on the matter on kidnapping and talking about matters in Edo State, Okpeyolo seeks traditional rulers' support to tackle insecurity. How does he want them to play in this matter? Find out on page 3 of the Standard Times today. Okay, moving on to other story. Oil surges past $80 as Trump rekindles Iran tension. When is this going to end, you will ask. But that story is on page 2. Flood waters disrupt operations in NBA Apapa office, raise stakeholder concern. Quite valid concern there. That's on page 3. NLNG clinches Operational Excellence Award at NOG Energy Week 2026. This opens on the front page and continues on page 3. A very sad story and scary things that happened. Okada man kidnaps 3-year-old entrusted to his care in Delta State. Warri refineries. The story is on page 2. That's it from the Standard Times. Let's check out the Daily Sun newspaper. Let's just say that now, coming from South Africa, and reactions in Nigeria, says reps seek review of bilateral relations with South Africa, demands probe of death of Nigerians and others. Now, this story is on page 6 as far as the Daily Sun newspaper is concerned today. Talking about the 2027 election, which is not just far from now, nothing must happen to Obi. Atiku gives out warning. He is the next person to give out that warning after Kwankwaso. All right. Federal government's response to threats against Obi's life is worrisome. That is the statements coming from Kwankwaso this time around. Both stories opens on the front page of the Daily Sun and continues on pages 6 and 26. Quite a bit of a long read in case you want to check it out. Governors, senators differ on state police funding. Mba presses for financial autonomy, investment in technology, and then states should earn more than center, says Solu. Controversy, yeah, still going on there. My thoughts and your thoughts, which one should stand? That's the matter. On page 6 of the Daily Sun is where you will read this. U.S. releases list of Nigerians set for deportation. Page 27 read. You might want to find out the names there. Ex-CCT Chairman Umar, prison, yeah, page 4 read. Fulani militants, worst perpetrators of Christian genocide in Nigeria. And that remark is coming from a U.S. lawmaker. Who and why and at where, you find out on page 26 of the Daily Sun. Fraud allegations against Gbajabiamila, rubbish, madness. The statement is coming from the FCT Minister, Nyesom Wike. Says FCT IGR jumped from 9 billion to 40 billion. Other TSA exits. Page 27 read there, by the way. Now let's check out what the GWG.NG has for us this morning. First account here is how notorious bound arrested. You might want to find out. Opens on the front page here. Continues on page 3. From the presidency, and it says governors must answer for kidnappings in their states. This story opens on the front page, continues on page 3. EFCC arraigns Miyetti Allah leader Bodejo for alleged $2.33 million crime. Page 7 read there. Atiku spits fire over alleged death threats against Obi and El-Rufai. That's on page 2. From 49,000 naira to 100,000 naira, Nigerian soldiers get pay rise. Let me take it again. From 49,000 naira to 100,000 naira, Nigerian soldiers rise. Okay, that's page 8. NCC reaffirms partnership with NIPR to strengthen telecom sector. Page 10 read, sadly, terrorists attack army base, police post, hospital in Borno. That's on page 4. Why Benue urgently needs state police, Governor Alias speaking on page 3 there. And Governor Idris on page 8 says safety of KB pupils, students, critical, not to be politicized. All right, we'll move on to other stories here. NDDC to launch Niger Delta Agri Investment Fund at July 15 summit, not quite far from now. That's on page 6. And lastly, NNPC partners sign 6 strategic gas deal to drive industrial growth and energy security. The story is on page 2. And that's about the paper for this morning. Just a few of them. This is not all, but of course you can check out more papers before the end of the day to get more information. But we checked out the Authority newspaper, GWNG, Daily Sun, Standard Times, Daily Independent, Daily Newscraft, Leadership newspaper as well. Much of the stories, or a lot of the recurring stories, are arrest here and there. You arrest one for funds, fraud, taking, and talking about the matter on insecurity as well. And that insecurity really dominated most of the papers, getting reactions from even US lawmakers about the matter and all that is going on. Well, it's quite interesting, the statement that came from the Zamfara state governor, yes, and that one is from the Leadership newspaper, and the big story there saying that, okay, for him, this is an example or an illustration he was given, saying that when his siblings, his brothers, not just one, but brothers, were kidnapped in 2019, that when the kidnappers called for ransom, he told them that he's not going to pay any ransom. Instead, they should go ahead and kill them, which for the reason they kept these brothers in captivity for 3 months before they released them. This is an analogy that he gave, a personal experience that he gave during a summit in Abuja, where we are talking about the issue for state police and the needs to get matters like that, and how it's encouraging and all of that, that we don't need to be paying ransom to them. Yeah, and then he gave out this analogy and he said they released them at the end of the day. So this is trying to encourage Nigerians, do not pay ransom. It's a very good one, but I would say it's quite dicey when you say do not pay ransom. Nobody wants to pay ransom. By the way, nobody has this money to pay in the first place, and nobody wants to pay such amount of money in the second place. But there is the issue of, okay, if we're not going to pay this money, can we have some kind of assurance from the government that there will be swift action anytime any kind of ugly incident like this occurs, that the government will be there to swiftly rescue, our loved ones? Because it's not like I said, it's not like anybody wants to make this payment. But when you look at how desperate people, how scared they are, thinking about their loved ones in in the hands of captivity, not knowing what becomes of them in the next few minutes. See people starting to scamper around, going out, trying to make this ransom is not even something that these bandits demand from just individuals. They also demanded from government, like that which happened was it in Medjugorje now, where they were even demanding billions of naira. These are the issues that we face. It's a good one. It's a very good one. But if we stay back to say, these are the questions, these are the concerns that are raised. If you stay back to say we're not going to, listen to them or pay any ransom, will the military, will the police, will all the agencies be working round the clock and not issuing issuing press statement that we are doing the best we can, but actually seeing the result that that is happening and that is being put to, this whole thing, these people will be rescued in a matter of moments and not that they will stay there for a long time is a huge concern that so many people have regarding that. But that was the account from, the Zamfara state governor on that matter. Very interesting. Anyway, there is another report that made the news. Still talking about the issue on this kidnapping. I think this one is from the GWNG paper. Says that governors must answer for kidnappings in their state. Whatever happens in the state, governors must answer to that. In your state, Governor Sheyi Makinde lamented that while governors are labeled the chief security officers of their state, the title is just basically empty because um, they don't have constitutional control over the police or the military. So he argues that governors shouldn't take the full blame, for security failures in their state. I don't have the control. I don't have the total control to tell them this is what you need to do, this is how you need to do, and all of that. So for that reason, you don't call me and say. But then the presidency, replied on that matter and said that that was the advisor Bayo Nanuga who made the statement. He said that yeah, the federal government sent delegation and deployed specific number to rescue, the forest guards and all that were deployed in Oyo State to do all of those rescue, but that using the crisis to aggressively push or do anything against the state, that the federal police cannot micromanage local forests. So that they need state police and that the governors must finally in their state, hold them accountable. Any state that there is any kidnapping issue, it is the governor of that state that you will hold accountable. Further buttressing the need and the push for state police, which, by the way, there are some other factions who are saying, you see the state police that you people want to bring, some governors will monopolize it. They're already using the federal police already. If you bring the state police, they will use it to oppress people, to become all those terror that people fear, that one who is in that has been a long-standing decade is still there. And I recall early in the morning when we were having the talking points, I posed the question on this matter, that which one is your fear mostly? Is it that the fear of the future, what might become, whether the governors will start, hijacking the local policing, the state policing, and use them for their own benefit, or you are rather more afraid that because the federal police do not know the nook and crannies of the states, it should be the state police who should be in charge. Which one is your own major concern now? Let the state police come in, or let it be for us to tackle the issue? Also, there was another one from the former Major General Lucky Irabo, who said, see, even the federal police that we have right now, we have the issue of financing, we have the issue of, you people should tackle that problem even from day one with the federal police before you even bring the state police. I don't think the federal police is an issue here, but even the state police. I'm talking about that poor financing. I'm going to use that to wrap up this conversation on this newspaper review this morning. Look at what one of the papers reported, that military soldiers, their allowance moved from 49,000 to 100,000. That salary is too poor for a soldier who risk their life. They don't have an assurance of living tomorrow because of the kind of job that they do. Their families are there. In this economy, you're telling me that soldiers were being paid 49,000 naira. It was the paper that reported it, that the soldiers were being paid 49,000 naira, and now the best increment they get in their salary is 100,000. You might be shocked to know that some of them might be old at some point. What's the joy in that? What's the happiness in that? That amount is so poor. And where did I get that story? Okay, that's coming from GWNG, and it says from 49K to 100K, Nigerian soldiers get pay rise. This is the pay rise. It's pathetic. is not driving anything for. We are in the level where civil servants are already asking for 300,000 naira minimum wage, saying that 70,000 naira cannot do anything. Realistically, in Nigeria, 70,000 naira cannot even feed you for 2 weeks. Talk more of having families. And we are getting soldiers being paid 100,000 and it's calling it pay rise. It doesn't really rise much. That rise is just not helping. It's just not helping. But anyway, those are the papers. You might just want to go through some of them, especially the headlines that really intrigued you. Pick them up and check out the papers this morning. And we take you now to the network studio where we'll be bringing you the news on the hour and more conversation. Today is Friday, so during the fact file at 8:30, it definitely will be on sports instead of other matters because we want to, of course, keep you updated on sports as you head into the weekend. Don't forget our political platform will be coming your way by 9 o'clock today. And after that, we do have guest spot with Dima at 11:05. My name is Dima, by the way. I'm wishing you a beautiful day as you go about your activities today, and just continue to be the best that you can. You. Are you done?
I don't know. The audio is low. But I won't start the system back.